we want to carry on from where we stopped last time. And we can remember we already created a database called COVID patients. And we created a table called TBL patients. We can remember we did columns or what you call fields, which you can see here, patient ID, sorry, name, ID number, date of birth, is active, and the rest. Now, so what we're going to do today is to build an interface using Visual Studio and C# programming language. So I'll go straight away here to my machine and type in Visual. So you make sure that you've installed Visual Studio. So like here I have Visual Studio 2015. When I click, it loads there. And to start a new project in Visual Studio, all you have to do is to click on New Project. So like there, I click there, New Project. And I have different projects I can do from here. I can do a console application, WPF, a class library, name them. But like we saw in the first video, we said we can do a Windows Forms application, or actually that is a desktop application, and that is what I said we wanted to use this project to build on. So come here and select Windows Forms application. This is going to be the name of the project. So and this is the location on your machine where it's going to be saved. So you can browse to change the folder and save it elsewhere, or you can just leave it at default location. This is going to be important when you want to open later, so you need to know where that project was stored. So here we have by default the name is Windows Forms application, but so you can rename by calling it COVID project. So the solution name also is COVID project. We don't want to go further into the details of that, but from there you simply click on OK. So once you click on OK, this is what is going to happen. You're going to have that as COVID project. It has created for us one form called Form 1. And that is the main thing that we are going to do. So to get here, you can click on View Solution Explorer, and that is how you're going to view what is there. So here, this is Form 1. I can rename and still using the naming, what I call nomenclature, the way I like it. For the object table, remember we called it TBL because that was a table. Now for the form, I like it calling FRM. So here, it is just taking what was on the database to the interface. And what's happening here is that, so the form here is going to be the table here, because that is what is going to represent the database. So that is basically how it can be, or simply how it can be. But like we're going to see later, more than one table or more than one form may not necessarily represent each other. But simply, when you're learning from scratch, a table will mean that you have a form for that table. And now, this is TBL patients. So here, I'll call this FRM patients. So I just come here, click on it, and then I'm able to FRM patients, because this is what is going to represent our table. This is where we are going to capture. So says you're renaming a file. Would you also like to perform a rename in the project and all references to the code element Form 1? Click on yes. So now here, up here has changed FRM patients, and that is how our form is. So this represents the table. Now, next is, now we want to create the fields that we have from here. So the first one is name, and the data type, remember we talked about the data types, was varchar or text. So that one will be represented here by a text box. So here we come to toolbox. If you can't see toolbox from here, you can go view toolbox. Then that toolbox will be able to come here. I can resize it this way for me to be able to view the toolbox here and my form. So this is what we call controls. These are what we call controls. And the control for text, which is nval_char in the database, is text or text box. So that one, we look for text box from here. So I come here, look for text box, and I drag it there. Good. Now with that, I can still nicely make it there because I expect the name to cover a big space. So that is how it is. Now if I right click here on this text box and go to the properties, it will open the properties here. You can close this. So these are the properties. So the text is what is captured here. For example, I can type in something here and you'll be able to see that there is text here. So the text property is what is going to have text in there. But for now, I'm not interested in having the text property because every time I want to come there, I want to find it empty. So I come here next. The name is very important. So here, this is a text box. And we are expecting that it will be capturing the name. And hence, the name of that text box will be txt name. There we go. Now, so we will also need to have something called a label. So a label for this case is somewhere where the client will know what are they expected to capture. And I'll come there and I must not put in the name there. I can leave it as label 1, but the name here will be name. So that is the name, and my text box is txt name. Next control is what is going to capture ID number. And for that case, I'll drag another text box for ID number. So I come in here, look for my control text box, pick it from here. ID number can be that. If I press control on my keyboard and drag that label, it can still come here. Sorry, there. So that is the label for ID number. And the name for my control is txt because it's text box ID number. Next is DOB, date of birth, and the data type for that is date. Hence, for date, I'll use a date picker control. So I look for a date picker here, date time picker, which is here. Drag it here and control, hold down and drag. Sorry, control, hold down and drag. Or optionally, you can just go back for a label. So the label is going to take in the text which should appear on our label is DOB, and that is date picker. Now, I like naming them DTP, now DOB. Yeah,